The great galactic council chamber was utterly silent. The low hum of the environmental systems and the soft chirps from various translator devices were the only sounds. Every eye, and every sensory organ, was locked on the massive holographic display at the center of the room. Just moments before, it had shown the vibrant, powerful red icons of the Cthar fleet, a swarm of deadly predators circling their prey. Now the display was changing. It was a silent, terrifying transformation. The largest icon, the command ship Gorfong, was the first to change. Its bright, pulsing red light flickered once, like a candle in a strong wind, and then went out completely. It did not turn into a damaged yellow icon, as was customary when a ship's shields failed. It did not turn into a black icon with a cross through it, which signaled a ship's destruction in a blast of plasma and metal. It simply turned a flat, dark gray, the symbol for total systems failure, for a dead ship. Then the ship next to it turned gray, and another, and another. It was a wave of nothingness, a quiet plague sweeping through the Cthar armada. In less than a minute, the entire fleet in high orbit was a collection of gray, lifeless icons, drifting silently in the dark. The troop carriers, halfway to the planet's surface, also turned gray, their descents suddenly stopping, their engines dead. The silence in the chamber was broken by a low, confused murmur. The delegates looked at each other, their faces showing confusion. What kind of weapon did this? There was no explosion, no flash of light, no debris cloth. It was as if a god had simply reached out and turned off every single Cthar ship. Chieftain Krog stared at the display, his massive body rigid with shock, his bony plates clenched tight. He leaned forward, his snout almost touching his own console screen. "What is this?" he growled, his voice a low rumble of confusion and anger. "A trick, a cowardly, energy-dampening field. My ships are only disabled." He turned his furious gaze toward Ambassador Kim Yuna, who stood perfectly still at her podium. "A futile gesture, human. My warriors will simply reboot systems, or they will board your ships with claw and blade. You have only delayed the inevitable." Many in the council nodded. An energy-dampening field was a known, though very advanced, technology. Could shut down a ship's power for a short time. It was a tactical move, not a winning one. It was a stalling tactic. Elder Xylos looked from the display to Kim Yuna. His reptilian face showed not anger, but a deep concern. "Ambassador, if this is a dampening field, you have made a grave error. You have angered the Cthar without defeating them. When their systems come back online, their rage will be uncontrollable. You have saved the Selenians minutes, at the cost of your own species' future." Kim Yuna finally moved. She unclasped her hands from behind her back and placed them gently on the podium. She looked first at the furious Krog, then at the worried Xylos, and then her calm eyes swept across the entire council. "It is not a dampening field, Elder Xylos," she said, her voice clear and calm, cutting through the nervous murmurs. "And Chieftain Krog, your ships are not disabled." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The Terran Federation has just deployed a targeted, planetary-grade electromagnetic pulse," she explained, as if she were a teacher explaining a simple lesson. "The energy was focused precisely on your fleet. The effect is not temporary. The pulse creates a power surge so immense that it melts the finest wires inside every computer, every circuit board, every power conduit. It burns out every single electronic component." She looked directly at Chieftain Krog, whose face was now a mask of dawning horror. "Your ships are not sleeping," she said with finality. "They are scrap metal. They are floating tombs. The lights are off and they will never turn back on. The life support is gone. Your warriors on those ships are already dead, suffocated in the dark. There is nothing to reboot. There is nothing to board. The machinery you relied on is now just so much useless junk." A wave of cold understanding washed over the council chamber. This was not a weapon of damage. It was a weapon of erasure. It did not blow up a ship. It made the ship never have existed as a functional object in the first place. The Cthar had not been defeated in battle. They had been made obsolete, in an instant. Chieftain Krog stared at her, his mouth slightly open. The arrogance was gone from his face, replaced by a look of pure, animal disbelief. He looked back at the display, at the gray icons that represented his mighty fleet, his pride, his power. They were gone, truly gone, not in a glorious fireball, but in a silent, inglorious, technological death. He tried to speak, but only a choked sound came out. He was a warrior who understood blood and fire and broken metal. He did not understand this clean, quiet annihilation. Elder Xylos took a step back from his own podium. His scales had paled to a sickly color. He was realizing the profound truth of Kim Yuna's earlier words. The humans did not fight wars. They ended them, and they had just ended the Cthar fleet without a single traditional shot being fired. They had not aimed at the warriors. They had aimed at the warriors' tools, and in doing so, they had made the warriors utterly irrelevant. The scale of the shift in power was staggering. Every species in the galaxy built their warfare on technology, shields, engines, weapons. Humanity had just demonstrated a weapon that ignored all of it. It simply turned the technology off. Permanently. The council chamber remained in a stunned silence, broken only by the heavy, ragged breathing of Chieftain Krog. The delegates looked at the gray icons on the screen, and then they looked at the small, calm human woman standing before them. They were not looking at a representative of a new, upstart species anymore. They were looking at something entirely new and entirely terrifying. They were looking at a power that did not play by any of the rules they understood. The game was over, and they had not even known they were playing. The bridge of the Terran vessel Indomitable was quiet. It was a dimly lit space, with dark panels and soft blue light coming from the many screens. There were no loud noises, no shouting crew members. The only sounds were the quiet hum of the ship systems and the soft tapping of fingers on consoles. Captain Lee Jun sat in his command chair in the center of the bridge. He watched the main view screen with a calm, focused expression. The screen showed the same view as the Galactic Council Chamber. The Selenian planet, beautiful and blue, surrounded by the red dots of the Cthar fleet. He saw the Cthar troop carriers, large and slow, beginning their move down towards the planet's surface. Tio Lee Jun. This was not a tragedy. It was a tactical picture. Every moving part was a piece on a game board, and it was his turn to play. Status report, he said. His voice was even and quiet. Commander Park Soo-min sat at the tactical station to his right. Her eyes were fixed on her own displays, which showed streams of data. The Cthar main battle group is holding position in high orbit. Their shields are concentrated forward, anticipating a counterattack from deep space. They are not looking at us. She pointed a finger at the screen, tracing the path of the troop carriers. The invasion fleet is completely exposed. No meaningful point defenses. They are relying on the main fleet for cover. They are confident there is no threat left in the system. Lee Jun nodded slowly. This was what he had expected. The Cthar thought like warriors. They expected a warrior's response, a brave, direct charge. They did not understand the human way. They believe war is a duel, Lee Jun said, almost to himself. Loud, proud, and face-to-face. They think we will come out and challenge them to a fair fight. Park Soo-min allowed herself a small, sharp smile. They are about to learn that we see war as surgery. You do not punch the sickness. You cut it out with a precise blade. And you do it before the patient even knows you have started. Exactly, Lee Jun said. He took a slow, deep breath. The moment had come. The lives of the Selenians below, and the future of humanity's place in the galaxy, rested on what happened next. He turned to the young officer at the communications station. Open a secure channel to all vessels in the task force. Authentication code. Guardian. Execute protocol. Cinder Fall. The comms officer, a young man named Kim Tae, nodded. Channel open, Captain. Transmitting execute command now. Throughout the silent, dark space around the Selenian system, things began to happen. Hidden behind the planet's large, silver moon, 3 Terran vessels powered up their main systems. They were not like the blocky, aggressive Cthar warships. They were long and sleek, shaped like daggers, with dark, non-reflective hulls that made them almost invisible against the blackness of space and the dense field of asteroids on the system's edge. Another group of ships came to life. They had been sitting cold and silent, mimicking the rocks around them. Now, their engines glowed with a soft, blue light. Aboard the Indomitable, Park Soo-min watched her screens as each ship in the task force confirmed the order. All units acknowledge, Captain. Cinder Fall is active. Weapon systems are coming online. They are syncing to the shared firing solution. Lee Jun leaned forward in his chair, his hands clasped together. Show me the primary target array. The main view screen changed. The image of the planet was overlaid with a web of glowing lines and symbols. Each red Cthar ship was marked with a code. The large troop carriers were highlighted in a brighter, pulsing red. The Cthar command ship, the Gorfong, is the priority for the initial strike, Park Soo-min said, pointing to the largest red dot. Taking out their brain will make the body twitch, but not coordinate. Time to firing solution, Lee Jun asked. 30 seconds, Park Soo-min replied. Her voice was all business now. The time for talk was over. On the other Terran ships, similar scenes were taking place. Captains and their crews watched their screens, their faces lit by the soft glow. There was no cheering, no angry shouting. There was only a quiet, determined professionalism. They had trained for this for years. They knew their jobs. The weapons they were preparing were not like the plasma cannons and laser batteries used by the rest of the galaxy. Those weapons were designed to blast through shields and tear apart hulls in a fiery spectacle. They were weapons for a battle. Humanity's tools were different. They were weapons for a conclusion. Aboard the ship Steadfast, the crew powered up a massive bank of capacitors. The air hummed with stored energy. They were preparing an electromagnetic pulse weapon of a scale the galaxy had never seen. It was not designed to damage a ship. It was designed to kill every single electronic circuit within a massive area. On the ship Righteous Fury, large panels on its hull slid open, revealing rows of long, tungsten rods. These were kinetic kill vehicles. They were simple, dense, and incredibly heavy. Using the ship's powerful railguns and the natural pull of gravity, they would be launched towards their targets. When they hit, they would not explode. They would simply transfer all their immense energy into the target, creating a destructive force as powerful as a large asteroid impact. 10 seconds, Park Soo-min said. Her finger hovered over a single key on her console. It was marked with a safety cover, which she had now flipped open. Lee Jun watched the screen. The Cthar troop carriers were descending into the atmosphere. In a few minutes, they would land and begin their invasion. He thought of the gentle, aquatic Selenians, so ill-suited for violence, facing the brutal Cthar warriors. He felt no anger, only a cold resolve. This was why they were here, to prevent that. All ships report ready, the comms officer said. 5 seconds. Lee Jun gave a single, sharp nod. Execute. Park Soo-min pressed the key. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. There was no bright beam of light, no volley of missiles streaking across the screen. The silence on the bridge was absolute. Then, an invisible wave of energy, launched from the Steadfast, raced outwards at the speed of light. It was a directed pulse, a focused tsunami of raw power designed to overwhelm and destroy any unprotected electronics it touched. On the main view screen, the first sign of change was the Cthar command ship, the Gorfong. This bright, active signature on the scanner suddenly flickered. Then it went dark. Not the dark of a ship that had lost power but was still there. This was the complete and total blackness of a dead object. A moment later, the ship next to it also went dark. Then another, and another. It was like a wave of nothingness washing over the Cthar fleet. Ship after ship simply stopped. Their engine signatures vanished. Their weapon signatures disappeared. Their life support signals went silent. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the crew watched the silent, terrifying display. EMP strike confirmed. Park Soo-min reported, her voice steady. The pulse was 100% effective. All primary and secondary targets in the engagement zone are neutralized. They are not disabled, Captain. They are dead. Every circuit, every computer, every power conduit has been fused into a lump of useless metal. Lee Jun looked at the main screen. Where there was once a powerful, active fleet, there was now a ghost armada. A collection of dark, silent metal tombs, drifting helplessly in the void. The first move was complete. The enemy's ability to see, to move, to communicate was gone. He knew that in the Galactic Council chamber, they would be seeing the same thing. He wondered if they understood yet. This was not the start of a battle. It was the beginning of the end. The Great Galactic Council chamber was a circle of immense scale and quiet sound. The air itself seemed to hum, filled with the low clicks, soft whistles, and translated words of 100 different species. Light came from a soft glow in the domed ceiling, illuminating the delegates in their private atmospheres and support fields. In the center of the room, a massive holographic display showed a silent, terrible drama. A swarm of sharp, angry-looking red ships chased down and destroyed the graceful, blue-hulled vessels of the Selenians. It was a live feed of a war, and the Selenians were losing, badly. Ambassador Kim Yuna watched the display, her hands resting calmly on the podium before her. She was a human woman, her black hair tied back neatly. Her face showed no emotion, but her dark eyes were fixed on the destruction. She had argued for this meeting for days. Now, finally, the council was listening. Or, at least, they were present. Elder Xylos, a being whose ancient, reptilian form was draped in fine silks, raised a slender, three-fingered hand. The gentle murmuring in the chamber ceased. His voice, translated by the universal system, was smooth and patient, like a teacher addressing a slow child. The situation with the Selenians is tragic, Xylos began, his scales shifting to a color of mild regret. But the procedures have been followed. The Cthar issued a formal declaration of hostility, as required by the Galactic Conventions of War. A fleet engagement occurred. The Selenians were defeated. The Cthar now have the right to occupy the primary land masses. It is the way things are done. It is civilized. From another part of the chamber, a loud, guttural laugh erupted. Chieftain Krog of the Cthar leaned forward in his seat. He was a massive creature, covered in thick, bony plates, with a jaw that seemed built for crushing. The Softskins should have surrendered their best fishing zones when we first asked. Now we take it all. Their world will make a fine new hatchery for my brood. He looked directly at Kim Yuna, his small, deep-set eyes glowing with amusement. Let the humans watch. Perhaps we will keep some of the blueskins as pets for you. You seem fond of weak things. A wave of uncomfortable shifting moved through the assembled delegates. The Kthar were brutal, but they followed the rules of war. That was what mattered. War was a controlled, formal affair. You declared it. You fought a fleet battle. The winner took a pre-agreed prize. It was messy, but it was predictable. It kept conflicts from spreading. Kim Yuna did not react to the insult. She simply waited for the room to quiet down again. When she spoke, her voice was clear and firm, cutting through the low noise. The Terran Federation, she said, must invoke the right of defense for our Selenian allies. A new wave of sound, this one of surprise and disbelief, rippled through the chamber. The right of defense was an old, almost forgotten rule. It allowed a species to fight for an ally, but it was considered an extreme and reckless act. It could pull the entire galaxy into a wider war. Elder Xylo sighed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. Ambassador Yuna, we understand your emotional connection to the Selenians. They are a peaceful people. But to invoke the right of defense is to risk total war. Your species is new to the galactic community. Your military technology is, with all respect, untested. The Kthar have the most powerful fleet in this sector. You would be throwing your lives away for a fight that is already lost. It is not a logical action. It is not about logic, Yuna replied, her gaze still on the hologram where the last of the Selenian ships was being torn apart. It is about a promise. The Selenians are our friends. We have a treaty. If they are attacked, we will respond. Chieftain Krog slammed a heavy fist on his console. Then respond. Come. My warriors are hungry for a real fight. Your little ships will make fine target practice. Kim Yuna finally turned her head away from the display and looked first at Krog, then at Elder Xylos, and finally at the entire council. Her expression was still calm, but there was a new intensity in her eyes. You misunderstand, she said, and her voice, though quiet, now carried a weight that silenced the room completely. The Terran Federation does not recognize your conventions of war. Elder Xylos blinked slowly. I beg your pardon? Your rules, your declarations, your limited engagements for limited goals. We see them as a game. A very dangerous game, Yuna explained. My people have a different history. We have a single, non-negotiable doctrine regarding the defense of our allies and our own space. She paused, letting the silence grow heavy. If you attack us, or if you attack those under our protection, she said, looking directly at Chieftain Krog, you have started a war, and we do not fight wars. She let the words hang in the air for a long moment. The entire chamber was frozen, waiting. We end them. For a second, there was utter silence. Then, Chieftain Krog burst into roaring, hysterical laughter. The sound was so loud it distorted the translators. Other delegates joined in with chirps and clicks of derision. The idea was absurd. A new species, threatening to end a war against the Kthar? It was the most foolish thing they had ever heard. Elder Xylos did not laugh, but his scales shifted to a color of profound pity. Child, he said, his voice soft, you speak from a place of inexperience. To end a war requires a fight, a brutal, bloody fight that you cannot win. You are condemning your people to annihilation for a point of pride. Kim Yuna offered a small, cold smile. It was the first real emotion she had shown. It was not a friendly smile. No, Elder Xylos, she corrected him gently. We are condemning the Kthar invasion force to oblivion. There is a difference. She tapped a control on her podium. The Terran defense fleet has already been deployed. The operation is underway. This meeting was not to ask for permission. It was to inform you of the new reality. On the massive holographic display, the view zoomed in on the Selenian planet. The red dots of the Kthar fleet moved confidently, like sharks circling a kill. They were beginning to move their large, bulky troop carriers toward the planet. They were completely exposed, their shields focused forward against an enemy that no longer existed. They were following the script of a civilized war. They had no idea that the script had just been torn up. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was heavy and deep. The delegates were still trying to understand the horror of the EMP attack. Their minds were stuck on the image of those gray, dead ships and the suffocated crews inside. It was a terrible, quiet end. But on the main holographic display, the situation was changing again. The view was now focused on the Selenian planet itself. The large, heavy troop carriers of the Kthar had been descending into the atmosphere when the EMP hit. Now they were dead too. But they were not floating in space. They were caught in the planet's gravity. They were falling. The massive ships, without power to run their engines or stabilizers, began to tumble. They started to glow red-hot as they ripped through the upper layers of the atmosphere. On the screen, they looked like slow, clumsy meteorites. Some of the ships broke apart high up, scattering pieces of burning metal over a wide area. others stayed together, becoming larger and larger fireballs as they fell toward the planet's surface. A wave of shock went through the council. This was a new kind of disaster. The Cthar invasion was not just stopped. It was being destroyed in a way that would cause massive damage to the Selenian world. The falling ships would crash into the oceans and continents, causing huge fires and shockwaves. Chieftain Krog saw this and found his voice again. It was a raw, angry sound. You see what your trick has done. You are destroying the very world you claim to protect. You are a fool, human. You have killed my warriors, but you have also killed countless of your fishy friends. Elder Xylos looked at Kim Yuna with deep sadness. The chieftain is crude, but he is not wrong, Ambassador. The collateral damage from this method is immense. The Selenians will suffer greatly from these impacts. Was this your plan? To save them by setting their sky on fire? Kim Yuna did not look away from the display. Her face was still calm, but there was a sharp intensity in her eyes now. She was watching, waiting. Just watch, she said. Her voice low but clear at that moment. Something new appeared on the holographic display. From the dark side of the Selenian moon, several new icons appeared. They were small, blue, and moved with incredible speed. They were Terran vessels. Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Li Jun watched the same falling troop carriers on his main screen. Phase 2, he said, his voice firm. Target the falling debris. Prioritize the largest pieces that will impact on or near major Selenian population centers. Commander Park Soo-min was already working. Her fingers flew across her console. Acknowledged. Firing solutions locked for kinetic strike package. The Righteous Fury and the Stonewall are in position. They have a clear line of fire. On the view screen, the Terran ships launched their weapons. But they did not fire lasers or plasma. They launched solid, heavy projectiles. They were long, dark tungsten rods. They were fired from massive railguns on the ships. The rods shot forward, moving faster than the eye could follow. They used the ship's power and the planet's gravity to accelerate to a terrifying speed. The first rod hit a large, intact troop carrier that was about to crash into a vast Selenian coastal city. The rod did not explode. It simply struck the top of the falling ship and kept going, punching straight through the entire length of the massive vessel like a needle through a leaf. The kinetic energy, the sheer force of the impact, was unimaginable. The troop carrier did not just break apart. It vaporized. It was instantly turned into a cloud of superheated gas and tiny, molten fragments that scattered harmlessly in the upper atmosphere. A moment later, another rod struck a different falling ship with the same effect. It vanished in a flash of light and energy. Its mass converted into a harmless, glowing dust cloud. The Terran ships were not stopping the falling debris. They were erasing it from existence before it could hit the ground. In the council chamber, the delegates watched, speechless. They saw the huge, dangerous fireballs in the sky simply disappear, replaced by a brief, bright flash and then nothing. Chieftain Krog stared, his mind refusing to accept what he was seeing. What is this? They are shooting down the falling ships? But there is no explosion. Elder Xylos leaned closer, his ancient mind analyzing the data. They are not using explosive warheads, he whispered, a new kind of fear in his voice. They are using kinetics, pure mass and velocity. The energy release upon impact is like a small asteroid strike. They are not destroying the targets. They are disintegrating them. Kim Yuna watched the precise clinical operation. We call it kinetic bombardment, she explained to the stunned council. Or rods from God. It is a very simple principle. We take a very heavy, very dense rod of metal. We accelerate it to an extreme speed. When it hits, all that energy has to go somewhere. The target cannot withstand it. It is annihilated. She pointed to the display where another large piece of debris was turned into dust. It is clean. There is no radiation, no lasting fallout. Only a bright flash and a loud thunderclap in the sky. It is the most efficient way to neutralize a falling object without damaging the planet below. The truth of what was happening became clear to everyone. The humans had not only planned to kill the Cthar fleet, they had also planned for the aftermath. They had known the ships would fall, and they had a perfect, precise solution to stop it. They were not just powerful. They were thorough. They thought of everything. The last of the major falling debris was vaporized high above the Selenian oceans. The few smaller pieces that remained burned up harmlessly in the atmosphere. The sky was clear. The planet was safe. The Cthar ground invasion, the thousands of warriors in those troop carriers, had been eliminated without ever setting foot on the planet. They had been wiped out in the sky, between the vacuum of space and the world they had hoped to conquer. Chieftain Krog slowly sank back into his seat. The fight seemed to have gone out of him. His mighty army, his unstoppable horde, was gone. Not in a great battle he could sing songs about, but in a silent electronic death and a clean, precise erasure from the sky. There was no honor in this. There was only nothingness. Elder Xylos looked from the clean, safe image of the Selenian planet to the calm face of Kim Yuna. He finally understood. This was not a different way of fighting. This was a different way of thinking. To humanity, war was not a contest. It was a problem to be solved. And they had just solved the Cthar problem with brutal, terrifying efficiency. The battle was over, and the humans had not lost a single soldier. They had only spent ammunition. The main holographic display in the Galactic Council chamber now showed a quiet scene. The Selenian planet hung in space, serene and blue. Around it, the gray icons of the dead Cthar fleet drifted silently. There were no more explosions, no more falling ships. The operation was over. The silence in the chamber was deeper than before. It was not just shock now. It was fear. The delegates had just watched a fully powered fleet be switched off and then its pieces be cleaned up with terrifying precision. They had witnessed not a battle, but an execution. Chieftain Krog sat slumped in his seat. His massive shoulders were hunched. He stared at the screen, at the graveyard that was once his pride. He saw the empty space where his troop carriers had been. He saw the silent hulks of his warships. The reality was sinking in. His power, his threat was gone. He was nothing now. A chieftain without warriors. A predator without teeth. Then, a new communication alert chimed in the chamber. The main screen split. One side still showed the planet. The other side now showed a human face. It was Captain Li Jun, on the bridge of the Indomitable. He looked calm. His expression was serious, but not angry. Chieftain Krog, Li Jun said. His voice was clear and firm, filling the silent room. Your invasion force has been neutralized. Your capacity to wage war against the Selenians, or against the Terran Federation, no longer exists. Krog lifted his head. A low growl started in his throat, a sound of pure hatred. You coward. You dishonorable worm. You did not fight. You used tricks. Li Jun ignored the insult. He did not get angry. He simply watched the Cthar leader, like a scientist observing a dangerous animal in a cage. The Terran Federation now offers you a choice. Li Jun continued, his voice never changing its tone. This made the entire council lean forward. A choice? What choice could there be? The Cthar had been utterly defeated. Choice! Krog snarled, spitting the word out. You have destroyed my fleet. You have killed my warriors. What choice is there? The choice for your species' future, Li Jun replied. The Selenians are a merciful people. They have asked us to show restraint. They do not wish for more death. Because of their request, we will not launch a counter-invasion of your homeworld. We will not burn your cities. We will not glass your planet. A wave of relief, mixed with disbelief, went through some of the delegates. It was more mercy than anyone had expected. The Cthar would have shown none. Li Jun continued, and his next words froze that relief into ice. However, he said, and the word echoed in the quiet chamber. This mercy comes with one condition, a permanent condition. He leaned slightly toward the screen, his gaze fixed on Krog. Should a Cthar military vessel ever leave your home system again, we will interpret it as a renewed act of war. Should your species ever attempt to build another warship, we will see it as a direct threat. Should you ever raise a weapon against another species again, the Terran Federation will respond. He paused, letting the weight of his words build. And our response will not be a declaration of war. It will not be a fleet engagement. It will be the same as it was today. There will be no battle, no warning, no chance for your warriors to die with what you call honor. His voice was as cold and hard as space itself. There will only be obliteration. We will not fight you. We will delete you. We will make sure the Cthar people are never a threat to anyone, ever again. Do you understand? The scale of the threat was absolute. It was not a promise of future conflict. It was the promise of total, effortless extinction. The humans were not saying they would win the next war. They were saying there would be no war. There would only be a final, silent punishment. Chieftain Krog stared at the face on the screen. He saw no hatred there. He saw no passion for battle. He saw only certainty. This human was not making a boast. He was stating a fact as simple as saying that gravity pulls things down. It was the most terrifying thing Krog had ever witnessed. All his life, he had understood strength as something loud and violent. But this was a different kind of strength. It was quiet, patient, and absolute. It was the strength of a cliff face that does not care about the waves crashing against it. The waves break. The cliff remains. His defiance broke. The anger drained from his face, leaving only a hollow shell. He looked down at his own hands, the hands that had crushed so many enemies. They were useless now. He looked back at the screen, at the calm face of the human captain. He gave a single, slow nod. It was the gesture of a broken leader. I understand, Krog said, his voice a rough whisper. He looked toward the image of the Selenian planet, at the peaceful world he had failed to conquer. The Cthar, surrender. We will recall our patrol ships. We will not build warships again. He said the last words as if they were a death sentence. For a warrior culture, perhaps it was. Li Jun gave a small, respectful nod. A wise decision. The Terran Federation will be watching. This channel is closed. The screen showing Captain Li Jun went dark. The chamber was left once again with the image of the quiet planet and the dead fleet. The war was over. It had lasted less than an hour. The Galactic Council chamber was a tomb. The Great Hall, usually filled with the soft sounds of 100 different species, was perfectly silent. The air was heavy and still. No one moved. No one spoke. All eyes were fixed on the main holographic display, which now showed a peaceful, undamaged Selenian planet. The gray icons of the dead Cthar fleet were being quietly removed from the display by the Council's computer system. It was as if the entire invasion was being erased from history. The silence was finally broken by the sound of Chieftain Krog standing up. The large, brutish alien seemed smaller now. His bony plate sagged. His head was bowed. He did not look at anyone. He did not say a word. He turned and walked slowly away from his podium. His footsteps echoed in the quiet room. He left the chamber, and the great door slid shut behind him with a soft, final sound. The mighty chieftain of the Cthar was gone. His power and his pride broken not in a fight, but in a demonstration. All eyes in the room slowly turned away from the door and moved to the center of the chamber. They settled on the one person who was still standing at her podium, Ambassador Kim Yuna. She stood calmly, her hands once again clasped behind her back. She watched the delegates, her face showing no pride, no gloating, no anger. She simply waited. Elder Xylos was the first to find his voice. It was a whisper, rough with shock and a new, deep fear. He looked from the clean image of the Selenian world back to Kim Yuna. "You," he began, then stopped, struggling to find the words. "You never intended to fight them. You never gave them a chance. You just deleted them from the battlefield. You destroyed them while they were helpless. This is a slaughter. This is not war. It is." He could not finish. The concept was too monstrous for him to name. Kim Yuna looked at the ancient diplomat. There was no pity in her eyes, but there was a glimmer of understanding. She knew his entire universe. His civilization's understanding of conflict had just been shattered. "Honor," she said, her voice clear in the silent hall. "You speak of honor, Elder Xylos. Honor is a luxury. It is for those who play at war, who believe it is a game with rules and winners and losers." She took a small step forward, and every delegate flinched. "My people learned a long time ago that the most humane war is the one that ends the fastest. The kindest battle is the one that never happens. You see disgrace in their helplessness. You see a dishonorable kill." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the terrified assembly. "We see a guarantee," she continued. "A guarantee that no more Selenian children will die today. A guarantee that no more Cthar mothers will lose their sons. The fighting is over. It ended before it could truly begin. The Cthar capacity for violence has been removed. Permanently. That is not dishonor. That is efficiency. That is mercy." "Mercy?" Elder Xylos choked out the word. "You call that mercy? The complete and total destruction of their military without a single blow traded." "Yes," Yuna said, her tone final. "Because the alternative was a long, bloody war. It would have cost millions of Selenian lives. It would have cost thousands of human lives. It would have cost every single Cthar life in that fleet. Instead, we chose a path that cost only the attackers. We saved more lives than we took. That is the only math that matters to us. That is our mercy." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every species she could. "The Terran Federation seeks peace," she stated. It was a simple, powerful fact. "We have always sought peace." Then her expression hardened, just a little. Her voice became as cold and hard as the tungsten rods that had vaporized the falling ships. "But understand this," she said, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "We do not secure that peace with the pointed spear of a warrior, waiting for the next challenge. We do not protect our allies with promises and treaties that can be broken." She leaned forward slightly, and the entire council seemed to lean back. "We secure our peace," she said, her words slow and precise, "with the absolute certainty of the executioner's axe. It is a tool we hate to use. We keep it sharp. We keep it ready. And we make sure everyone knows what it can do." She stood straight again, her message delivered. "So I will say this only once. Do not make us pick it up again." With that, she gave a small, formal nod to the council. It was not a gesture of submission. It was a dismissal. She then turned and walked calmly toward the exit. Her footsteps were quiet, but in the utter silence of the chamber, Every one was as loud as a drumbeat. She did not look back. The great door slid open for her and then closed behind her, leaving the Galactic Council alone with the terrifying new reality. Elder Xylos slowly sank into his chair. He looked at the empty space where the human ambassador had stood. He looked at the peaceful planet on the screen. He thought of the gray, dead ships. He thought of the cold, calm face of the human captain. He thought of the absolute, final threat that now hung over the galaxy. Humanity was not another warrior race to be measured, challenged, or contained. They were not a political rival to be outmaneuvered. They were something entirely different. They were a force of nature. They had not won a battle today. They had cancelled it. They had redefined the very meaning of war, replacing it with a single, chilling word that now echoed in the mind of every being in the room: obliteration. And the galaxy would never be the same.